I welcome everyone. My name is Phil Anthony. I'm with ICC as the Digital Code Solutions Specialist. With us today is Ed Slurso, and our presentation today is going to be on our AI Navigator. So I'm going to let Ed take over, but during the presentation here, feel free to post questions in the chat about Digital Codes Premium. I'll answer those as we're going forward. And if anything specific comes up about the AI Navigator you want to post in chat, go ahead and I will either answer the question directly or interrupt Ed to stop him at that point if it's pertinent. And then we'll just circle around at the end and have time for all the rest of your questions. And if anyone wants to raise a hand and verbally ask a question at the end, we will do that then there as well. So my part is done for now, Ed. I'll monitor chat and you go right ahead.
Sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do, folks, is I do have some slides up on the screen. I'm going to kill my video so this will run smoothly. I'm just going to walk you through a few slides to give you some basics about sort of large language model AI and how AI Navigator was built. I think that's a nice introduction. I'm then going to take you over to Digital Code so we can take a look at it. So here we go. Let me just make sure it is actually going to advance my slides. Yep. I start all of these presentations always by acknowledging the fact that while I work on AI Navigator and I do a lot of work on it, we have a great technical team. So I always thank them. I work very closely with them on this, on other digital initiatives at the ICC. What we're going to discuss today is a little bit about large language model tools. We're going to talk about how AI Navigator was built. And then I really like to do parts of these sessions to talk about using AI Navigator and really some of the tips I give go for any AI tool or chatbot. Just some vocabulary that I think helps people. A large language model, everybody hears AI being talked about today. They're almost exclusively talking about a very particular kind of AI, which is a large language model. It's a term for machine learning tools that can take in lots of material and then generate new text. And that is important to understand because it's a very specific kind of tool. It's not the same as every AI tool that's out there. ChatGPT is the most famous of these, and you hear ChatGPT referenced very often. ChatGPT is created by OpenAI. OpenAI is the partner that we use for AI Navigator. There are other such tools that are very similar that are out there. Digital Codes is the platform that we've put AI Navigator onto. It's our online platform to host our code resources. So AI for building codes seems like a wonderful idea. And it's, building codes are by and large published online. A lot of answers are not subjective, which is great. There aren't answers in the code. It's made and written to provide answers. And codes and standards are really hard to search. I gave a presentation recently to a group of building officials, and many of them agreed that they had code books that looked a lot like this book right here with 1 million Post-it notes on it, because online search of building codes can be a little frustrating. The terms are repeated often, and it's not always easy to do a very simple search and get great results. But AI for building codes is tricky. Large language model tools actually struggle sourcing content when there's a lot of options and there's contradictory text, which is true in this area. Building codes do repeat their terminology very often. That can be tricky. And the tricky structures, exceptions are sort of the best example of that. There are others that get used in building codes, but it's very common to have sections of building codes that lay out a code and lay out something over a paragraph and then have a list of 6 to 10 exceptions. That at times makes it a little more difficult for a large language model to relate and provide sort of a response that makes sense. I do lots of examples as to why AI tools should be specialized, why ChatGPT public interface is probably not your best friend. A question like, is there a minimum temperature for a home heating system? This is an answer for what I call a name brand general LLM chatbot. It's a long answer, but it doesn't source the answer, and it actually gives sort of inexact. This is very common for sort of general chatbots that are out there. It'll give sort of information that says around or about, and it also does misinterpret. This is an example that I pull out specifically because I've seen it several times with this question, and it actually misinterprets information that it's gotten as to where there is variance to the standard that it's citing. The next example I show is from our AI Navigator. I call it a trained chatbot, but it is from AI Navigator. When you ask the same question about a minimum temperature for a home heating system to it, it gives you direct reference to code sections, multiple code sections, and it takes where that exceptional information is and it gives you precise information with measurements in there. That's really the crux of what we're trying to get to when we build a tool like AI Navigator. We want that tool to be working to a standard that is very high for that content. I'm going to do a brief history on sort of how we approach this. We agreed early last year to, after really GPT 3.5 had really sort of made an impact, we agreed to sort of study that. We conducted a study last year, and we were a little horrified. We saw with building codes that, with expert answers that we had, because we have a technical services team that can, that knows the code well and can give us questions and answers very readily. We found accuracy that was not what we wanted, and really, difficult resourcing from sort of just general ChatGPT. We formed what we called a skunkworks team, and then we agreed to try to launch it by October 5th, which was our annual meeting last year. Yep, I've put in this slide, and definitely it's true. We worked very hard over the summer. It was a difficult and challenging summer because there's a lot to do when you try to specialize an AI tool. It is really a lot of work. We did get over that work, and we hit sort of targets we really wanted to see. So over test question sets that we worked with on our technical teams, we saw over 80% correct responses to those. We had a critical test of questions that we really wanted to clear that. And then we launched it last October. I was at our annual meeting, if you were there. I was the guy in the gold jacket playing a game called Stump the Bot. And it went very well. And there were a lot of people that were receptive to it. And honestly, what I really enjoyed about presenting is those that wanted to love the bot used it and came up and played our game. And those that wanted to hate it did the same thing and came up and played our game. Things have happened since then. We released a code update in January to really try to get at the fact that we were seeing about 30, or in some cases, some days and weeks, more than 30% of the questions that were just really overly short or not really structured as a question, sort of structured more like a search. So we built some logic in the tool to sort of respond to users and help them a little more and try to get them answers that might fit their needs when they haven't typed in a question that is really a question. And that led up to April, where we did a big release for our 2024 I codes, also 9 complete sets of state codes that were the first ones that we specifically trained AI Navigator for. I threw a stat down in here. We have been very gratified that through April 30th, 2024, there are more than 13,000 questions. And for people that are rating it, and we have a tough audience, and we know that we have more than a little over 61% of a thumbs up rating. We're very pleased with that. We said if we'd gotten 60, we'd be thrilled, because we know some people will have expectations that are very high for what they expect out of this. Just a couple quick things on when you want to unlock AI. Most AI chatbots you use will try to answer almost any question, and it means you really have to think about the questions. A more highly trained one like AI Navigator will sort of be built to intercept questions and try to help if the question really seems to lack focus. I can't stress enough that AI Navigator is very much built at this point to not be conversational. And many of the best chatbots that are sort of focused and structured aren't at this point. They're not having a conversation with you. So if you have multi-part questions, it's really important to try to break those down. If you want it to fetch you the very best resources, it's good to break questions down. Couple examples. These are real examples, actually, that I've taken and redone. If you type in something like brick and wood frame, same lot, It's not really a question. It's not really clear exactly what you want to get out of that. AI Navigator is trained to try to help you with that. It is going to pull resources it thinks might help. Those reference sections bits that are at the bottom here, this answer, are it trying to find those sections, and you'll be able to open those sections from its answer. But it's going to tell you right up front, and I think it is good that it does that it doesn't have a lot of confidence that it's giving you a good answer. Some questions do get very wordy. This is where a lot of times breaking down a question is better. This question that I'm asking on this page, I'm going to break down into 2 questions over the next couple pages, and you're going to see a much more specific, focused answer. So this is a long question. I'm not going to read it to you, but the crux of it is that you're not getting direct information back from the AI bot because the question has too many components and it's sort of parsed strangely. It's not very smooth. And that actually does, question quality really has a huge effect on answer quality. If we tighten that up, if we divide the basic components of the question to say, hey, what are fire requirements for 2 adjoining buildings? It does much better at telling you specifically what you need to know about that question and giving you a very direct citation. And then if we go to the next one, our fire requirements different for brick and wood frame buildings, it again can give you a direct citation, very good, and give you a lot of information that's hopefully helpful. So just sort of advice I try to give everybody. This tends to work for a lot of chatbots, but particularly if you're using ones that are trained over a content set like building codes, or it could be anything. If it's a specialized bot that's using specialized information, tends to be very good to really try to break your questions down into good component questions to give it the best chance to fetch you good content. Okay, I was going to move from here to a demo for now. So I'm going to get out of this and take us to...
Yeah, there was, thanks. There was no questions on that, but I think it was good because some people are using it, some people haven't, but it's nice to see how much work you have done on it with your team and kind of hints and ideas to get full use.
And I think I do like to give people some context about it. We do have a bunch on the website about what was done to build it. There's some notes from the team. There's a lot of other things that are there, but I also think it's really helpful to also just talk about sort of the best way to interact with these.
Yeah, definitely. As you pull, I've not seen a screen yet, but as you pull it up to do the demo, point out some of those. I know they're indicated by question mark arrows, and some other people want to do more of the research.
Yep. So I'm going to just quickly talk about navigating to this. I have it open right here, but to navigate to this, if you're on, and I'm assuming you can see my screen, Phil, right? If you're on Digital Codes Premium, the Premium Tools section has a large set of premium tools because we have quite a few these days. I also do work on Premium Answer, so I'll give that a tiny plug here. But AI Navigator is the top of those premium tools. You can also access it if you're going to do a search. We've now put a prompt there of if you think your search is going to be really complicated or it really is more of a direct question that you're trying to find an answer to, you can navigate direct to AI Navigator via a link there.
Absolutely. And I got a flurry of questions coming in about what codes it search. I know you're going to cover it, but so
let me cover it. Right. Let me cover a couple examples and then we can
especially
sort of...
people are asking about like the standards, ASTM, ASHRAE. I know not.
And some of that I have some things to say about. So, yep, I'll be happy to sort of get to those. It is important to say that we do not just simply dump content onto AI Navigator. We do specifically go through a training process. So the codes are grouped into sections quite deliberately of what we're training it for. Here I am. If I've gotten to the page of AI Navigator, for most people that are starting, it's going to default to the iCodes. You are able to select others. I am going to go ahead and ask my first question of the iCodes 2024. It's going to show you if you've already asked some questions in the past, what your recently asked questions are. One of the requests I've had recently is to expand this further. So that is on our roadmap to let people go and recover more of the older questions that they've asked. So if I ask it, can a vehicular ramp be used for a means of egress? It's typically going to return answers between 5 and 15 seconds after you ask them. It's going out and resourcing the content. It actually asks itself the question multiple times and then provides you an answer. As you can see, there comes my answer. It's going to tell me, my answer there, and it's going to cite sections as well. And then what I think is really good and what I highly recommend people do, yes, it's going to give you an answer. Yes, it's going to cite sections in those answers, but the sections are then immediately available and you can jump directly to them if you want to within digital codes. So if it gives you multiple places that might be relevant to you, you can actually read the code that's related to its answer directly. And I think that's a really key feature and a feature that everybody should use if you're talking, to our chatbot. I'm going to refresh this one time just to pull up another question real quick. I'm cheating a little bit. I admit that I am cheating. So I can also select not the iCodes. I can go to one of the states that is specifically trained on right now is Florida. I can ask it a question about Florida's codes specifically. And again, you can type the question in. It's going to tell you that it's delivering a response. If it, doesn't deliver you a direct response, it's going to actually say right up front, AI Navigator will say, I am not certain of the best answer. That actually doesn't mean it didn't find an answer. It means that its own confidence rating is low, and it does want you to know that. This is a good example because Florida's code does actually vary from the straight I codes a little bit. They have their own sections on this that are a little bit different, and their table, I think, is a copy of our table, but does have some differences as well. So it's giving you an answer that's sourced directly from the Florida building code. Okay. I think it's probably a good time to start taking questions. Hopefully, we're really trying to make it very simple for people to interact with this. There are tips for using it. And one other thing I will say is there's also, information about, hey, what location are you at? There's a lot of information that we do put on screen. We know people don't read that information a lot, but there is also an AI Navigator main page that I do recommend to people that is, a very useful page as well, just to talk a little bit about what I've just talked about. How did we build this? What is upcoming? We will be putting sort of some new articles on there pretty soon as well.
And answer a couple questions, Ed, and you go ahead and qualify them as I'm doing that. So as you can see, Ed had pulled over. There are specific, what am I talking about? The state amended codes that are available. It does not access commentaries because someone asked about if it searches the commentaries.
Correct. So it's a really good. So commentary is really a tricky thing at this point. We do have the commentary content actually loaded into the vector database that AI Navigator uses, but we are not, at this point, we're not letting it touch it, but it is something I'd expect to see in the future, that the commentaries and the premium answers content will, I would hope before the end of the year, be something that is integrated into AI Navigator and its knowledge base.
But in the meantime, as you see those three choices it gives you when it gives a response, if you have a DCP commentary license, you can go directly using those code sections as well too.
Right.
We are not including, for example, other titles in there like ASTM and ASHRAE. Any comment on that, Ed? I know we don't, but
correct. So at this point, the materials that are in there are ICC model codes, and when you pick a year, so if I pick I'm just going to, say if I'm on the 2024 iCodes, it is the full set of iCodes that are published for 2024. If I'm within a state's codes, it's going to be the state codes that are specifically customized and adopted. And in some cases, also iCodes they've adopted unamended. It is not going to be additional standards or additional materials. You'll see those things mentioned within the answers, but it will not source that material directly. So if that material has been duplicated within the code content, sure, it's going, if the standard itself has been included, because that happens obviously with some of them, then yes, that's going to be referenced. If it is a reference to a standard, then no, it's going to continue to be a reference to a standard to say, hey, this has to be compliant with this standard. Again, if that's a standard that you have access to via your Digital Codes Premium license, you could certainly jump to a section. I'm just going to show you that when you jump to a section, it simply goes to that section in the code book, and any features you have for Digital Codes Premium at that point are going to be available in that section. So, if there are link, if that content is also hosted on our digital codes platform, it's going to be available to you.
And then I know you covered some of the best ways to ask the questions, but I'm going to ask this one as well in case I don't have the technical background to understand what the word prompt may mean in this. But is there any need to use prompts when asking questions?
So actually, I do a really interesting slide that I cut out of this about the prompt for. So when you are asking a question to AI Navigator, no, you don't need to tell it, hey, I want you to think like a building inspector or do anything like that. Actually, when you ask a question that's, say, 6 words long, the question that AI Navigator is getting is probably about 256 words long, because there's a very large prompt set built into the tool where how it's going to answer and how it's going to use the information it finds is being regulated by that prompt. Again, it is actually something, it's a good question though, because it is something that I did a presentation to the Washington Building Officials Association a few weeks ago. And a few of them were really gung-ho on the idea of letting users choose, particularly like maybe different types of agents, like one that's not so wordy, that's like, hey, just give me citations and be really direct. And give me something that's wordier and gives me longer answers. And actually that is something we could deliver, and we're going to do some evaluation on, because they had some really good ideas on it.
I think I know the answer to this, but let me just read it verbatim. Can AI be embedded programmatically to pick up on the links, the sections, subsections to interpret terminology used?
So in doing that, we've built it, and almost everybody that's delivering you a custom AI product has built what's called a vector database. It's turning all the data it's using into specific data for the chatbot. And the answer is that yes, we could take anything that's a linked resource and choose to include it. We are being very careful about that. One of the things that we see a lot in the testing we've done is that if you give it a lot of sources that you don't necessarily know that source really well, and have that source indexed into your data really well, the large language model itself really struggles to rank data. So if I give it access to a resource that happens to hit the words sort of in the perfect way, it may cite that resource when we don't want it to as well. So the answer to that is yes, we absolutely intend to have more of the resources you're talking about within the chatbot knowledge over time, but that we are taking an approach of introducing those deliberately because we're trying to hit just a certain standard with its answers. The particular standard we want is we want to make sure it cites the code correctly and accurately a very high percentage of the time, that it doesn't generalize its answers, that it doesn't, they call it hallucination. I just call it making stuff up. But that is, in the AI world, they call it that it doesn't hallucinate.
Yeah, no, I think it's important for us to stress here that this was developed to be, one step forward, one step forward, one step forward. We have seen other code reference websites just throw something up there, and they may not be using, license codes. They're not bringing it from, and this is kind of a closed environment. I guess you can kind of talk about two things.
It is very much, it is very much a controlled set of material that's feeding it, and that does mean that there will be questions that it doesn't necessarily answer, but it also does mean that it can be programmed and evaluated much more tightly and carefully.
Yeah, no, we're definitely making sure it's trained to bring back, pretty concise answers.
I think I just saw a question about threading and is it right? So it's not context. So the bot treats every question at this point as a new question. That is another thing that we will almost certainly introduce to it at some point, is to allow you to stack your questions, to say, use the information you just gave. Essentially, you can program these bots really in two distinct ways. One is to treat every question as a new question, and the other is to use the context of the conversation it's currently having to help inform its answers. We have actually tested both quite a bit. We, I would say, are a little too picky at this point to want it to be conversational, although I think that is what the ultimate goal for it is. We just want to see it be a lot more accurate when it's conversational. And that's, again, that's a little bit of a limitation of how the large language models work, but it's also something that we do think is improving all the time. I mean, we are literally already testing with GPT-40, which has been out, I think, all of 2 days. But it's pretty, it's got some hope from what I've seen.
And can you go back to the AI Navigator
Yep, I surely
show,
can.
and show where you got a choice of answers from that preview list? I'm going to make a couple comments too, and then go to an example I've seen. Well, first of all, go
Yep.
ahead and ask the question. If you have feedback as you're using this, on the lower right-hand corner
Yep.
is the feedback button. Click on that for a second, Ed. Lower
Yep.
right.
So I'm going to right here. Well, the number one way to give feedback
Yep.
to this right here is make sure you rate answers. And I can take it. I can tell you right now, if the answer is this, go ahead and do this. But I'm hoping that more of the answers are this.
Yep.
We right now have just a basic up or down rating system. Is the reality of that will be is that we're going to open that up to be more of a comment-based rating system as well at some point.
Yeah, no, but yeah, just the sheer number of everyone doing that is going to be helpful. I was talking about also on the bottom right-hand corner, Ed, the feedback. This works for any one of our pages too.
Yep.
That feedback button, we do pay attention to those. Go ahead and fill it out for this or anything else.
Yeah.
And there's another question. Actually, I had an example. So, for example, like if you're in the building office, someone makes a phone call. This is a way you may know the answer, but if they're looking for the exact code section, this is a pretty quick
Yeah.
way.
I mean, that's really honestly a great use for it is if you know the words that you want, but you don't know the code section, ask a quick question to say, where do I find, material requirements for drainage pipes? And you are very likely to a large percentage of the time get, a good research, a good citation. I will say that there are times where, we always have it return 3. It is sort of meant to be 1, 2, 3 across, but there are times where you may find that it might be the third resource that actually most closely matches what you wanted. That's why we return 3, because it is still doing its own evaluation, and it is still not the best possible building code official that's out there.
Can you go ahead and click on one of those
Sure.
responses there? So if someone does ask you this question, as you can see it, we are referencing the I codes and the state amended codes. You have a license because you're able to use this. If you're having a conversation, go ahead and jump to the actual book, the code section, scroll down and jump to that section.
Yeah.
But these codes can be viewed by anyone, even if they don't have a license. So every code section, like that one it referenced, Ed, go ahead and click on that waffle out to the right. So
Yep.
here's an example. If you're having that conversation, that third link the share link is a
Yep.
way for you to directly share that with that person. So you could be literally looking on the same page at that code section, even if they don't have a license.
Yeah.
The other fourth button there, the print one, with a license, you are able to print or save to a PDF any code section in its subsection. So that's another way that it keeps the formatting really nice there. And then you could download that, mark it up, and send it as an attachment back in an email to that person that asked it. So kind of cool.
Yep.
Copy paste can I copy paste previous response to help generate a follow-up question?
Yeah, I mean, you can use copy paste on the feature itself. So you can take part of its response and then paste that into the next question you want. Yeah, it'll work. And it is a useful way to do things at times, is that some responses that you'll get may open up something else that might be the most logical next question. Just realize that next question, it treats it like a new question. But do I do that? Yes, I do exactly that sometimes when I'm testing it.
What would cause error 503 message?
Error 503 is the most sort of, it's not super common, but I'm not going to say that it would never happen on the platform. That is an error that we're getting between ourselves and the large language model service we're using. So we do sometimes have communication issues. We do monitor how many of those we see. We're not typically seeing a lot, but we're also not seeing absolutely zero. If you do get something like that, I typically do advise you to close the session and reopen it. It seems to work best for me to do that.
And then people are asking about using AI for compliance. I guess I can state this. I mean, it is going to give you the reference that you could offer compliance on, but go ahead and give your insight on that, Ed.
I mean, we definitely advise you to use the code sections for compliance. When you're quoting this, use the code sections. Can you use the answer from AI Navigator to educate yourself, to potentially share with somebody, within your own office that you're working with? Yes, absolutely. We definitely do not recommend that you at this point say AI Navigator told me this, and so it's the definitive answer. No, it's not. And our disclaimer does say that. And no large language model chatbot anywhere should be promising you that it's giving you authoritative answers. We do, like I said, we think we've built this to a good standard. We're pretty happy with it. And we're getting good feedback, but we're also realistic that there are times its answers are incomplete. There are times that it is not the optimal answer for the question.
Thanks, Ed. That
using it, I mean, we call it Navigator really because we do see that as the best use case. We thought about it before we named it to say, like, the thing it does great is for a lot of users, it will work better than search. A lot of times you do come to codes with questions in your mind. It is, I think really gratifying to use if you're using it in that way, to say this is, I've always found, typing in the words means of egress is so unsatisfying for codes, because it comes up with way too many results and it's difficult to sort through them. Whereas typing in a question, that's not much longer, but that's specific to means of egress, in AI Navigator can really help you get to exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, expand on that a little bit. Ed. Go to our actually advanced search page. I mean, you made a good point. I do use several examples on it, like looking for keywords. Like you can open it up on the left-hand side on the advanced search. I think hit the green button over there. It'll just take you right to the page. One example I use a lot is I was asking about roof draining on a sidewalk, and if you find the words roof drain and sidewalk, the code section doesn't actually call it a sidewalk, calls it a public walking surface. So that's where I always kind of use that as a good example, because it's kind of that logic where it has that intelligence.
Right. So you could put even like all of the words, like, I mean, yeah, I honestly don't use the advanced search. Now you're educating me, Phil.
Yeah, I mean there's some other key things in there like a proximity search and things like that,
Right.
but this
But I
was
mean,
always our standard for search, and the AI Navigator has become more popular.
yeah, and I would say that exactly this example of search, like search is still great for a lot of things, but it really struggles with phrases that are in building codes because of the repetition of those phrases. It just does. No, the best possible search engine will still struggle with it a little bit. So I would say try AI Navigator in those instances. I think a lot of, like I said, I think a lot of people will find that it works well in those situations.
We have stopped receiving questions.
Okay, I'm gonna just stop sharing for the moment, Phil, then, and let you, because I thought there was one or two more little things you wanted to talk about on this webinar.
I was just, well, leave your screen up in case someone asks a question here. I'm going to ask if anyone verbally wants to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I will also state that we have recorded this, so everyone who has registered, even if they didn't attend, we will send a recording of this. So this is, let's say, last call for chat posted messages about AI. And also, I will stay on after Ed leaves here to answer any questions that you have about Digital Code's premium licenses themselves. So I will pause here. If there's no response for a raised hand to ask a verbal question or anything else in chat, then we will just end it, and then I will end the recording.
I will share one more thing real quick, because I do want anybody to get this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just stop sharing for 1 sec, Phil, and I'm going to go back to my slideshow just very briefly because I have a last slide on there. Give me 1 second. Come on. I swear I'm trying to get it to do this. Give me one. There it is. Now share. I think I got it. There we go. Just my contact information is there. I am the person that works on this every day. And I do love to get feedback. I am reaching out to people who I've seen have been using the tool from looking at the user account. So I've been reaching out to people. So if you're somebody that has used it a lot over the past few months, you probably will hear from me sometime soon. But you can certainly get in touch with me. Also, I will be doing a presentation more generally. It'll certainly mention AI Navigator, but more generally about using large language models effectively at the AIA meeting next month. So I put my session number in there. If you are going to the AIA meeting, come check it out.
There's a question asked about, can you use AI Navigator for taking an exam? So I'll parse that question and say the pronto exams that you may have heard that you can use digital codes on. Obviously, you will not be able to use that when you're taking a pronto exam and have access to digital codes. It's just basically the basic view, so you don't have any of your extra features like access to notes or access to AI Navigator.
Yep. That is where it is at right now, is that yes, it is not going to be enabled for things like that. I do on our sort of roadmap at some point is that potentially AI Navigator or maybe an offshoot of AI Navigator would be great at doing sort of test questions so that you could on the fly sort of generate questions. We've played with it doing that. And I will, say that that's probably not a tomorrow idea, but we have ideas like that. And I would expect to see us try to bring, the bones of AI Navigator, sort of the infrastructure we've built into more areas of ICC's products.
All right. Actually, you had mentioned something to me, and there's a reference, kind of a question. Do you like the partners that you work with? I know you mentioned like ChatGPT AI and stuff like that, and I know you're doing actually a podcast or something. Is that public now?
I am doing, the ICC is doing a podcast that I guess they did last year, and I actually recorded yesterday. They are going to do an episode of the podcast about AI, and I will be on there, and then some at least one or two much smarter people than me are going to be on there. They've gotten some other AI technical experts. So there's going to be an announcement about that sometime soon as well. And I would check that out as well. I'm certainly going to check it out. I'm going to be on it, but I'm certainly going to check it out because it sounds like they lined up some interesting people.
And also question it. I mean, I know you kind of covered it. You said you could go to different collections. I don't think you really got into the years though. So there are previous years. This question's about 18. How far back do we go?
AI Navigator is trained for 2015, 2018, 2021, and 2024 code cycles. So it goes back to 2015. I would not think we are going to go back further than that, although, we have been asked about 2012, and I don't know that it's impossible. I don't know that we will. It's a lot of work to embed the code the way we want to for AI Navigator to work. So we will certainly be training it on more specific state codes. So today, let's say we released our first 9 where it's been specially trained on certain custom state codes. There are more being worked on right now. And expanding its reach of content to things like commentary, premium answers at 100% on our roadmap as well.
Yeah, and those states that we may are like Texas, for example, who doesn't supply or doesn't have the overall amended code, or some of the states only amend certain titles, it will automatically default to a search for the code cycle year that they are on.
Yeah.
And then also the electrical code, I suppose someone's probably referencing NEC on this, but right now, well, it's definitely ICC titles, and I know you had kind of touched on other ones too,
Yeah.
so that's not on the roadmap, but we would make a big announcement if that was happening outside.
If that were happening, I can tell you, I'd be thrilled. I'd love to work on more content, but right, that would be an announcement that it'll involve a lot of things that have nothing to do with me. But yeah, I would expect us to integrate some other popular content that goes beyond just the codes. We are working on that. That is something, again, it's probably not going to happen tomorrow, but it will certainly happen.
All right. What I will do is I will end the recording now, but I'm going to stay on. So I appreciate everyone that attended this, and we are going to continue to do these specialized webinars as well too. Ed, people really loved your presentation. They're asking you to post your contact slide up there.
I am putting it up there for everybody.
Someone also
Don't make me
asked,
regret it, people. That's all I'm saying.
someone also asked if they could have your PowerPoint slide too with all those great graphics I saw you using.
Yeah, I mean, I will, Phil, I'll leave that to you. I do this presentation. Some of you may have seen versions of this presentation. Yeah, when I do these, I'm always happy to get the slides out.
It's in the recording as well too. So
yeah.
The ones that he used. But all right, I'm going to end the recording. Everyone hold on if you want to stay on and ask more questions. So thank you for attending.